just because I imagine there's people that are on this call right now, or maybe watching this back a little bit later on, that have no idea who I am. So for those of you that don't know me, I am Zoe Holland. I run a learning business that focuses on partnering with organisations like the IMechE to really bring to life the D&I strategies through learning interventions, different awareness education, and also help to create real kind of tangible actions that work for each of the industries. And of course, in this world, we're talking about engineering. It's an area that I'm extremely passionate about, which I'm sure Bims and Isobel can agree with there, and probably Donovan actually as well. Christina, I think, is on the call here as well. And it's something around the idea of a fair and balanced membership and workspace that is really core to my values, and creating those really inclusive and diverse spaces that really helps us as a society more than anything. So I've been working with the IMechE for almost 2 years now. It's flown by. I feel like an employee, actually, just because of how invested I am and how welcomed I felt to the organisation. But I'm supporting the wider D&I strategic work through lots of learning activities with people like Christina Korzax, who I know is on the call, the D&I committee, the exec, and of course, the president of the IMechE as well. So lots and lots of experience with you all. Really enjoyed getting to know you over the last couple of years, and obviously probably more so coming up. So the purpose of the panel today is because we want to really get to grips with kind of where we've been, where we're at currently, and where we're going with regards to the D&I strategy in the IMechE. So I think February 2021 was when the IMechE actually launched the new diversity and inclusion strategy, and it really sits at the heart of the idea to be visibly more inclusive. So as we move forward now, I'm really looking forward to seeing a little bit of the perspectives of both Isobel and Bims as well, and really start to talk to our guests about their unique perspectives and experiences on all of these subjects, and how bringing to life words on paper has been for them, which is a little bit more challenging than just putting out a statement on a website. So lots of really great work has happened. Now, before I introduce today's guest properly, let's just have a little bit of a look around why D&I is important. But before I do, obviously, hello to Bims and Isobel. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's lovely to see you both. Oh, can't quite hear you at the moment. Technology, wonderful. Okay.
Hiya. Hi, so
We'll get there. We'll get there. It's fine. It's lovely to have you both today. I'll do a proper introduction to get you involved. But let me just remind people on the call just why we're kind of here, what the importance is in the field of engineering. I've just got a couple of slides that I want to share. Hopefully people can see that. Fantastic. I can see that they can see that now. But the idea is that there's lots of different ways and lots of different reasons why the IMechE is focusing on diversity and inclusion from a strategic point of view. And there's lots of really great data and research out there that backs up what I'm about to say. I'm always happy to share that data with people as well, because I know people like to see those credible resources and things like that. But the idea around this is lots of different things. So when organizations focus lots of time and energy and resources around engaging and developing inclusion and diversity within their spaces, they naturally create higher innovation. So there's a bigger ability to be innovative, which we know in the engineering field is really important. Obviously, that gives us greater competitive strategies. We can create better designs and products and solutions that help wider people throughout the world. And also, of course, the variety of perspectives when we have more diversity naturally breeds that innovation through that. There's some other statistics here that I think are quite helpful. So when there's higher levels of diversity in an organization and people feel like they belong, so they feel included, it's actually been reported that there's around a 20% higher rate of innovation. And if you're from an organization that is working for funding or making profit, then actually there's also a 19% higher innovation revenue. So there's lots of really great reasons around diversity at that point. I think we all know as well with regards to the skill shortage, there's a massive skills gap in the world of engineering, and as we have so many different generations working together, we're starting to notice that gap now within that skill, and we're not really attracting as many people as we would like to the field. So there's a real big aspect of that, and actually 77% of CEOs globally see availability of skills as the biggest threat to their organization. And that was a CV survey, sorry, put my teeth back in, survey from PwC that was done recently. There's also the aspect that we need diversity of thought to really encourage collaboration. So making sure we have lots and lots of different types of thinking and different brain functionalities and different life experiences means that we're more likely to collaborate and really come up with some innovative ideas and even better ways. There's also really interesting studies around controversial business practices. So a study found that when there's a higher gender mix in senior positions, that there are fewer instances of controversial behaviour and therefore greater opportunities to manage risk. And of course, we've got the reputation to protect as well. So there's some really big aspects with that. Customer and user affiliation as well. So if we're thinking as engineers and we're designing products and different aspects for people, we need to understand the end user, we need to understand the customer. So when we have a closer connection and therefore a more diverse community within engineering, we're much more likely to be able to do that. You've also got the aspect of future talented members and staff. So are we attracting the best possible staff and members to our organisations? Are we bringing that great thinking in? Are we really starting to embrace that? And you've got lots of really interesting statistics in this area. So you've got 67% of people that are job seekers say that D&I is important when considering employment opportunities. And the same thing goes with membership opportunities, of course, as well. You've also got lots of different statistics around Gen Z, which is that younger generation, those kind of early career generations. Now, they tend to be very skeptical about organizations' kind of true commitment to diversity and inclusion. So they're likely then to take that talent to a competitor or take it elsewhere, which of course is not what we want. There's also 5 generations working together, which has never happened before. So we're really having to learn to work together and really start to embrace all of that knowledge from those different generations to really create innovative, amazing solutions. And finally, D&I is important to current members and staff. You know, there's lots of really great statistics in the world of engineering. So 1 in 5 current people that are working in engineering thinking about getting involved in diversity and inclusion in the next 6 to 12 months in their organisation. There's also 1 in 5 that are planning in the future after that, but also 15% are already actively involved. So if you add those together, that's a lot of people that are really, really finding diversity and inclusion important to them and their values. So there's lots of really important kind of organizational strategic reasons to do that. But there's also the aspect with regards to individuals and how it feels as an engineer. So there was a really great study that was done recently, and they focused just on engineers, and they wanted to understand what it was like from an inclusivity point of view to be an engineer. So you can see some of those statistics on the screen there. So employees that, engineers, apologies, that have disabilities actually tended to rate their managers less positively with things like respect and commitment and those sorts of things to D&I. So that's a really insightful one. Also, if you think about the LGBT plus community of engineers, they don't feel open, a lot of them, around half of them don't feel open to be able to talk about their sexual orientation at work. So they're having to hide versions versions of themselves, which of course takes away from them being able to do really fantastic work. You've also got some other statistics there with regards to collaboration, and then that's the hierarchy aspect as well. So it might be more senior and junior people, but of course then we come back to disabilities and the witnessing of bullying and harassment. So there's a much darker side, of course, to this. So it just gives you a bit of an idea of the importance of D&I for the engineering industry, but also engineers as human beings, as individuals themselves. So I'm going to stop sharing now because I'm going to ask Isobel to give us a little bit of an introduction and just to tell us a little bit about the work around the D&I committee and all of the wonderful aspects that you've been involved in.
Thank you, Zoe. Do I introduce myself as well, just to set the scene? Would that be helpful? So I'll do that first. So I'm Isobel Pollock-Hulf, and I'm a past president of the institution. I was president in 2012, and I may refer to that year a couple of times as we're talking. My background is very much in manufacturing, but actually I've had quite a diverse career because I left manufacturing, I moved into academia, I've worked for large companies, small companies, so and then research organizations as well. And I represent the government on measurement at one of the committees out at the National Physical Laboratory. I'm sure there's lots of other things I could tell you about myself, but perhaps they'll come through in my answers to the questions. Maybe I should also add that here at the IMechE, and it's a very interesting pairing, not only do I chair the D&I committee, but I also chair the new nominations committee. And the nominations committee is here to try and bring new talent into the organization. We have so many talented members, and we are looking to involve some of those members onto our committees. And we've been running a much more open nominations process, and it's produced some fantastic results for us. So that's a bit about me. Maybe I'll mention some other things as I go along. But maybe the other one to mention is that I come from Northern Ireland. I come from a family of engineers, but we also have dyslexia in our family. And that's made me aware that there are things that aren't visible. So we have a lot of invisible characteristics. And it's really important to start conversations on those invisible characteristics. So that maybe sets the scene for why I have an interest in this subject. But let me now tell you a bit about D&I and the committee and where I picked it up. So I picked it up a few years ago from the excellent work that had been done by the committee before that. But maybe it's the engineer in me, but I could see this was a major journey we needed to go on. There were so many things that we could do, needed to do, must do, etc. And I needed a bit of a framework to pull this together to help, again, communicate to others what needed to be done. So that's when the strategy came around, and we finally got it published last year. And there are a few key messages in it. And again, in publishing a strategy, that's one major step forward. But we're very much into the delivery phase. And the first key part of that delivery was the educate. And that's where Zoe's been fantastic at running courses for us, involving both staff and members. And this has all been joint, and that's why it's great to have BIMS here, because we have worked so well together on this. I should say thanks to Christina, who is in the room. She's sitting opposite me here, but we worked very hard to pull together the strategy. Now, we had many things helping us here. We had a lot of friends, advisors, but we also had the Royal Academy of Engineering, who had been developing a strategy framework, an assessment framework, which it was asking all the PEIs to assess themselves against that framework so that they could do some comparisons. So that was a very good structure, and we've used that structure into our strategy itself. Now, I'll pick up a couple of bits. We had, we've divided the organization. This organization is quite complex. We've called it 15 sectors, and Christina's currently working with all the people in all those sectors to have discussions about what they think about D&I and what they're going to do in the future. And I'm just referring to my notes here. But we had 5 strategic themes. One was, first of all, to establish internal support. I had to make sure that this organization wanted to do this, understood what it's going to do, thought about itself, And so I'm delighted how this organisation has come together and supported. And I can see it in different examples. This happens to be the president's speech. In it, he has, if I get the camera right, there, he has covered the D&I strategy. When I look at the trustee board annual report, which is a huge, heavy document, it's mentioned in there. And BIMS will talk further about another document that's just been produced, which is future plans. And again, there's a lot of reference to diversity and inclusion and values and culture in that document. So everything for me has come together. It suggests that we have formulated the right strategy. And it's very hard to define that. Bims and I talked earlier about what is the right strategy, but we seem to have pressed a lot of the right buttons because this subject is so huge. So I talked about the internal support. We also need to make sure that we're working with the right external support. And again, we've worked with Zoe on this. We've made strong links with ABFE, and that's excellent. The third step of this was then to inspire the change in behavior. And we are on a journey there. Many people now are having conversations they would never have had. And I'm sure, Zoe, it's been prompted by the training that you've done. But it's so important to have those honest discussions and talk about things that are a bit tricky to talk about often. And that's our third theme. And I'm going to have to put my glasses on now. The fourth one is just to constantly drive systematic change. We're on a journey. I've learned a lot from it. There's so much more we could do. So we're on a drive systematic change. And the fifth one is, of course, to track some of the behavior and performances. So to look at our KPIs and see how we're changing. One example would be that we have many members. We like to know a bit about our members, and when they first sign on, they tick the boxes to answer some questions. But nearly 30% of our members don't tell us very much about themselves. So wouldn't it be great if more members told more about themselves in our when they join the organisation? Zoe, have I said enough for now? Does that help?
I think that, yeah, I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much. I think that really highlights the overarching theme and the mammoth amount of work that yourself, Christina, the D&I committee, the exec, the president, all of these people have put in to get the organisation to this point. And it's such a great point to be at, and it's been wonderful, obviously, to be involved with that. So thanks so much, Isobel. I'm looking forward to asking you some questions in just a sec. Bims, tell us a little bit about your involvement with all of this, because obviously you've been partnering with Isobel and the rest to really bring this to life for the staff as well, and to bridge that gap between staff and members.
Okay, thank you, Zoe. So hello, everyone online. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really glad to have you here because it shows that you recognise the importance of diversity and inclusion. And for me personally, it's been a very, very personal journey in so many ways. I kind of fell into my career, but I fell into my career because I had someone who could really see beyond my limitations. And I think that's a really, really key part of diversity and inclusion. It's seeing beyond our limitations, and someone saw beyond my limitations and said, you could do this, you can do that, why don't you do this? But it takes sacrifice on our part as well. And my first journey into the D&I was actually shadowing what was then known as the Equality or Equal Opportunities Manager in BT. My background is a mix of corporate and not-for-profits. But that was my very first sort of start into it. Didn't really understand it, but I was grabbed by the opportunities that it seemed to be about looking beyond our borders. Let's go beyond what we normally see and try something different. And if anyone talks to me about D&I, they always know that one of the centre points I talk about is courage, that it's a courageous journey. You have to put your head above the parapet. And I felt by learning, by shadowing, by mentoring someone, I could see what this D&I journey was about. And at those days, it was called Equal Opportunity. So you can see how far back we are going. We won't mention how far back. But one of the things that I did notice there, it was about giving people an opportunity to shine. And if I think about my journey here at the IMechE, I've been here just over 4 years now. It's really about, for me, as the HR director, about giving people the opportunity to shine. I think one of the things, Zoe, you've talked about in the very, very beginnings of our training is about allowing everyone to have a sense of belonging. And I think that's really coming through more and more, that with our members as well, Isobel, and that everyone wants to contribute. Everyone wants a sense of belonging here. And I think having now a solid business plan, and you've mentioned it already, having D&I and the values at the heart of that business plan means that we're in singular one accord. So for me, it's a really exciting phase to be in.
Excellent. Wow. Thank you. It's so succinct as well. I think that there's something really powerful there as well about the fact that you're able to share your personal journey with this, because it is very personal, isn't it? This is not something that is kind of a tick box exercise. It's not something that is just kind of there for the sake of it. It's a real genuine conversation opener. And I think that's definitely been my favorite part of working with the IMechE, and continues to be, as we actually had a session this morning and had some really, really great conversations as well. So brilliant. Thank you so much. We're going to get more in depth with your experience, the achievements that you feel the organisation has had, the benefits you feel like it's brought, and obviously the challenges that come forward from that as well. And then we'll have a little bit of a look at how we move forwards. But I'm going to dive straight into the questions, if that's okay, and just get really stuck in. So Isobel, if it's okay, I'll come to you first, because I think the IMechE has come a really long way in their D&I journey over the last few years. And I love the idea of kind of taking a moment to reflect. So looking back, what has been your proudest moment as an engineer, as a member, and as the chair of the D&I committee? Big question.
It's a very big question. So, and again, I'm looking down at my notes just to remind me, because I have done so much. This is a really difficult question to answer. Perhaps I will start with the D&I committee first. I am really proud that we did manage to write a strategy. We did get it done, and we got it done in advance of the IMechE sort of saying we need to review our strategy. So there's a lot of other work going on at the same time, but they have a very clear message from us as to what the D&I strategy is. And again, very pleased with the support from my D&I committee and from lots of other people. So as the D&I, I'm just really proud of the strategy, that we've got it and we're working on it, and it seems to be going well. So that's that one.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, as an engineer, when I've done a lot of different things. The one I was maybe going to mention, and it might surprise everyone, is I've been a quality manager in various places. And as a quality manager, you have to deal with the customer complaints. And I really wanted to understand the true story. When a customer complains, there's usually a story. And if you really think about that story and you investigate it properly, you will actually make a major change in the business and prevent other customer complaints. But you use it as a learning exercise. You understand it, you think about it, because they've taken the time to complain. There must be something serious there. And so it results in a better business. So that's an example of where in the past, whatever I've done, I've tried to listen, understand the story, make a change, and get the benefit. It's happened in various companies. I also enjoy being an engineer and working at the University of Leeds, where I participate with the Formula student team. From when they start through to when they get to Silverstone with the car, but watching that team develop, trying to make them aware of what's the role of the leader. They might think there's only one leader, but at different points, they all need to lead in their little subgroups. So understanding team working and trying to make the best result by developing the people. So those are perhaps two of the things that I'm very proud of doing as an engineer. But then as a member here, and I've been a member a long time, but I've been an active member. So it's working through the committees and ultimately to being president of this great organization. And I was president in 2000 and 12, which was the Olympic year. And to be able to sit in the stadium on that opening night of the Olympics and watch how they portrayed in that opening sequence of how our country had changed and the importance of engineering coming through, and that I sat there and went, yes, engineering. And for those who know, I've also chaired at one time the Heritage Award scheme, where it's very important that we recognise our past, which is part of our present, and that will become our future as well. But we need to talk engineering to the public. We need to promote this great subject to make people realise what we do, why we do it, and how they will benefit from what engineers do, whether that be in the healthcare, in the environment. There's just so many things where you need engineers, but we don't often tell people what we do and how we do it. So I'm very much into communication. And maybe the third thing, and then I'll pause again, Zoe, because I hope I've answered the question. That again, in presidential year, I had a chance to travel, meet many of our members, and really see what this world of engineering is like and this international perspective of this organization. But I was asked to go and represent the institution at the UN in New York. And I was asked to talk. We'd just published a report on food waste. And one of the key lines in that was that 50% of the food grown in the world never makes it to the human stomach. And if we could solve that problem, there would be more food for the world. And to take that very well-written report and carry that message, I was very proud to do that. I shall pause.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness, there were so many there. I wouldn't even know which one to pick out, but that's brilliant. And so many different aspects to your career as well, which is really, really wonderful. So thank you for that. Bims, the same question to you. I'd love to hear it from your point of view as well. What's the proudest moment or moments, as Isobel shared there?
Yeah, I think like Isobel, you know, life experiences gives you lots of proud standout moments. And, you know, for me, being able to make a difference, which I know it sounds a bit cliche, but it's really true. It's been something that I've tried to follow in my actual professional career, is to be somewhere where I can make a difference rather than be a paper pusher or processor or something like that. And that means accepting challenges. It means going into the unknown, and it means being prepared to stand and make a stand where it's not popular. But I think from a D&I perspective, being able to organise with my HR team at YMCA England and Wales, which is also a membership body, but made up of YMCAs rather than individuals, being able to organise the first Diversity and Inclusion Conference was really good, to bring all the YMCAs together to talk about things we'd never talked about. And that ran along how we look after the young residents, how we did our recruitment. So much like here, it wasn't just about staff. It encompassed all that we did. What is the perception to the public of the YMCA and things like that. And being able to organise a conference and bring together thought leaders from all directions. And what I found is that people were very willing to give their time to us to share from their own experiences, and to be able to come away as a group of HR leads and CEOs and say, we've learned so much today, much like what we're doing here. It's been really, really helpful, and it was almost like a forerunner to what we've done here. But to see the impact that had, and to see slowly how the composition of YMCA started to change because the barriers had started to come down, that was a real proud moment for me. And I'm not taking responsibility for the whole thing. There was a whole number of us that did it, but it's about someone having a vision for that. And I think that's very similar. Someone must have had a vision for what we're doing here at IMechE, and we've all been able to buy into that. And that makes me really proud. I'm really, really proud of the staff and the members that have got behind the vision here. You know, we can't take that for granted. We would not have been able to achieve any of that without the advocates, and, you know, a big shout out there for the early adopters, the ambassadors. They've been so great in vocalizing what we so much want and holding that flag up. You know, I've got Donovan in the room and Christina in the room and lots of people outside the room who have always been behind us and pushing us, and even in front of us saying, come on. And I think that's massively made a difference in terms of the transformational change here at IMechE. So that's a really proud moment for me as well.
Wow, yeah, huge. And I just wrote something down because I thought there's something there, that real connection between that improving the world through engineering and the social impact that you were talking about with the YMCA, but also, of course, the work that we do as engineers and the work that the IMechE do. So yeah, it for me, it just clicks. It just makes a lot of sense. So for those to be some of your proudest moments is really wonderful to hear. And yeah, there is something about that, not only for members and staff to come along for the journey or even to come after the journey. There are so many that have been like, hey, come join us, we're already in front of you, kind of here, which is brilliant. And that's been really special as a kind of outsider, although I don't really feel like an outsider, but that's been very special to watch. And so yeah, I completely agree with some of the things that you both said there. Really, really fantastic. Okay, so another question then, and this kind of brings me back to the benefits that I was talking about just on this slide. Hopefully people saw that if they were here in time. Not to worry if not, obviously we're recording this, so you should be able to watch it afterwards. But as I mentioned earlier, diversity and inclusion brings so many different benefits to the profession of engineering, that kind of idea of that personal and professional development, especially in this space. So I guess in your opinion, what would you say has been the biggest benefit or benefits specifically to members and staff at the IMechE when looking to create greater inclusivity? So I'm just going to throw that out to whoever would like to answer that. But what's been, in your opinion, the biggest benefits to members and staff at the IMechE?
Well, I think it's that we are now having very honest conversations, and I love the diversity of thought that comes into when we're debating, discussing things. You now have a greater range of things being thrown on the table. That does mean potentially if you're chairing that particular meeting or leading that discussion, you then have to manage it in a different way. It'll be more challenging, but you will get a better outcome at the end. And so it's a more challenging route to take, but actually, because you get the benefit of a better solution or a better discussion, it's worth the challenge of allowing that conversation to take place and know you'll get a benefit from it. I'll throw that one on the table and over to Bims then.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Isobel. I think also the fact that we are actually fulfilling our strategic enablers. I mean, in the past, we didn't necessarily articulate what our enablers were in terms of meeting our business plan and our vision and objectives, but being able to have that open, collaborative, inclusive culture between members and staff, I think has been hugely important. And, you've talked about it in the beginning, Zoe, about having the business case for D&I. We talk even later on, we might talk about things about why should we be doing it? Because it is that right thing to do. And I think Helena Rivers says that a lot. It's about doing the right thing. And I think all of us as staff and members would say that we benefited from that collaboration, being on your training, talking together, having those courageous conversations has been such an enormous learning for all of us, but for the better.
Yes. And of course, with the changes that have happened in the world, the fact that we now consider it really important to have this, make use of technology to enable us to talk to so many more people, whether it be through Teams, but just this virtual world that we live in means we are able to have these conversations now.
Yeah, so much easier than we've ever been able to do them before. Of course, there's some people that have more challenges with that, but as a general rule, yeah, definitely. Wow, I wrote down a couple of words that you've just said there. So collaboration came up for both of you, which is just one of my favorite words. And I think especially in the field of engineering, in the industry that you're in, collaboration has to be one of the top things that takes priority. As you said, Isobel, diversity of thought, which means lots of different types of thinkers and the ways in which we work and communicate and things like that. they're really, really beneficial to the solutions. And ultimately, engineering is about solutions, and it's about improving things and all of those sorts of aspects. And then, of course, BIM's following that up there, really backing up Isobel, which is fantastic. It just shows the partnership that has been developed here and really kind of pulled together with the work that you're doing. But it's wonderful to hear that collaboration really take a center stage with that. Fantastic. Just wanted to say, for anyone that is listening, please do send through any questions that you have, because we're going to have a little section at the end where we're going to pick up some questions that you've got directly to BIMS and Isobel, and of course happy to answer as well. So please do keep those coming through. We want to make sure we're hearing your voice as well. It wouldn't be inclusive if we weren't. So again, to both of you this time, and it'd be interesting to hear around your challenges. So what challenges do you envision happening in the world of engineering over the next few years? And how do you think that links to diversity and inclusion?
Well, I think I've made some reference already to say that healthcare is going to be so important. It already is, but healthcare, the environment, the energy crisis, I mean, those are the big subjects. There are many others as well. Engineers will be needed to create the solutions to those, but we need to do it jointly with others to get the best solution. I think we're going to be kept very busy. We need to have important conversations with the financiers, because someone has to pay for it. So we have to value the work in a certain way. But if we give good solutions, people will want them. So engineers are going to be very busy, and therefore we need more engineers, and we need to find a way to welcome them. And through the work that I've been doing with NOMCO and finding new people, I'm also very keen on making sure we onboard new members into the committees, new members into the IMechE. Think about how do you welcome people so that they are useful and contributing right from the moment they start. Over to BIMS.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I can take it from two perspectives, Zoe, and I think from a staffing point of view, obviously, clearly talent attraction is going to be huge. We are juggling in a very big pool of trying to get people in, whether working for us, and and it's really important that we attract the right kind of staff that can support our members. And we really try to do that in a way that says that, we want the best out there as well, but we also have to provide them with the best in terms of an environment. And, we can't negate the fact that if we don't have a great base here, an inclusive environment, we're going to lose out on innovation. We're going to lose out on collaboration. We're going to lose out on so much of the talent out there, the talent pool out there. I think from that perspective, it's really important, and if we're going to do what Isobel's job is doing, then we have to have the right people to support that and to understand what engineers need. And that could be anything as much as understanding neurodiversity and not just taking everybody as one engineer and that's it. We have to really think, what does the individual need? How will they get through their path of accreditation? So all of those kind of things, I think we have to think about now. The other challenge I think is really hard in this society at large. We are constantly fighting the media for, is it woke or is it actually anti-racism or whatever? All of these kind of unhelpful terminologies. Sometimes it means that they're imposing restrictions on us, and people come with a closed mindset to diversity and inclusion issues. And I think, if we're very honest, that is something that we have struggled a bit here in this institution, and it's about changing hearts and minds, but how to do that in a doing way rather than just a talking out way. So I think that's a challenge for us, but I do honestly think we're up to it. I think we're getting there.
Yeah, there's something that just came into my mind as you were talking there, BIMS, with regards to that. People, and I get this in every organization I work with, clients across the world and across different industries. So it's certainly not engineering as a whole, but I remember a couple of pieces of feedback that we got from some of those very early sessions, which was, I wasn't that interested in coming. I thought it was just going to be a bit wishy-washy, but I'm so glad I did, because we had some really good conversations, etc. And of course, we're just talking about the learning there. There's lots of different aspects of the D&I strategy, but Yeah, that's it. If you can open up those conversations, if you can open up that mindset and that approach, not only do you get all the benefits that you've both been talking about, you also get that personal benefit. It's so huge, isn't it? It's such a massive thing if you think about your personal, your professional development in the world of engineering. Of course, then naturally what happens is you create better solutions as an engineer, but also you have the opportunity to make a real impact in society, which is quite a big thing. It's quite an important thing. Okay, just want to double check everyone can hear me because the screen's frozen. Okay, no, it looks fine. Okay, I wondered whether it was my Wi-Fi. We're good to go. Okay, so the next question then is I'm gonna ask both of you, but I'm gonna come to you first, Bims, if that's okay. I just want to ask you around D&I, because I think often it's seen as a bit of a HR topic. It's something some people think that only applies to staff, but I'd love to know from your point of view, and I'll come to you, Isobel, straight after. How do you think it impacts members and staff?
Personally, I think it starts with us as an individual. You know, I've shared some of my personal experiences as a woman of colour, as a woman, and you know how it's been for me to walk into the room and have imposter syndrome and think, do I deserve to be here? And I actually think if you're in an inclusive organisation, you don't have that. You feel, I do deserve to be here. I am part of that conversation. So I think it very much starts as an individual and permeates outwards. And you're right. I think traditionally it's sat with HR, but it shouldn't. It belongs to everybody. It certainly belongs to your leaders. You know, I'm a big advocate of you have to lead by example. I'm really glad that we've got a really sort of diverse executive team, and our senior leadership and our management structure is very diverse. I don't think we need ticks and symbols to show how diverse our organisation is. And I think that is really important to the outside world. It speaks messages that there's someone like me who can understand where I'm coming from. And I want to be a part of that institution, whether it's as a member or whether it's as a member of staff. So I'm really pleased that it's never just been owned by HR or driven by HR. It was driven by the trustees, and it was supported wholeheartedly by the trustees. And Isobel will have no doubt have felt that confidence herself as a chair of what the mandate that has been given to us. You know, we don't take that lightly. We really want to keep pushing forwards, and that's going to be uncomfortable sometimes. That's why I think it is really important that we have our, you know, our doctors and our champions and our D&I officer, because every single person is a component of the whole. And I think that's what's really going to help us achieve here.
Amazing. Thank you. Isobel, I'd love to come to you with the same kind of thought process.
Right, I'm going to try and slot a few things together here. In doing the strategy, in the strategy, we have put a pledge against racism. And it was really interesting working with BIMS that we didn't just produce a statement that we meant nothing, meant something, but meant nothing. We wanted to really pledge to do something and make it an integral part of our strategy. Because this is where I would also say that I was from an era, I mentioned Northern Ireland. When I chose to do engineering, it was back in the 1973-ish to go to university. I had the benefit of few barriers at that time. The doors had opened to females in engineering. And therefore I had a very positive experience in those early days. But life was much simpler then. I think life has got many more different layers and many more different aspects to it. And some people are therefore finding it very challenging. So the whole process I've been going through has made me realize that I have a role to play. I am a role model, but I have to recognize that I need to help change the world to make it better for others and to make them more resilient. Resilience is one of my sort of new words that I talk about and I think about. From the point of view, it's not how you get knocked down or how you get knocked back, it's how you bounce back and how you perform and how you can be supported. And I hope that what we're doing here is helping people feel more comfortable, have those conversations, but actually get us better results and make IMechE a better place, which is really important to me, that we want to be a leader in this through what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you for that. And there's such a close connection with that idea of wanting everybody to be able to feel like they belong and feel like they're doing their best work and all of those sorts of things, and the resilience, because actually for you to be resilient, you kind of need to be in a safe space. You kind of need to be able to get things wrong and bounce back from it and learn from it and grow from it. And you can't really do that in an environment that isn't inclusive. So yeah, it's really, really important that we continue to like you say, strive to be leaders in this across the field of engineering, but also really think about how can we create those spaces where, or even enhance very safe spaces where people are able to do that. So that's brilliant. Yeah, resilience is very, very, very important. Probably more so in this day and age than it ever has been, for sure. Okay.
So can I then add a few things to say that the D&I committee and some of the close colleagues, we do a lot, but actually we're dependent on so many other people doing things for us in D&I, in the work that they do anyway, but doing it in a D&I way. We use the phrase, and we ask everyone to be a D&I champion. Cast a lens, cast a D&I lens over everything that you do, and just think, could I make this more inclusive? Have I got a diversity of thought in my processes? And so we've benefited from some of the work that's been happening on the cultures and behaviours, which you did, VIMS. That has helped us. We've got a new volunteers handbook, and someone's cast an eye over that. We've got the widget on the computer now, so that people can look at things in different ways. We're having a building review, and you need to have a building that works for you. So there's so much to D&I, but we're just hoping that everyone casts a D&I lens to just find things and just do them because they know they're good for us.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Excellent. Yeah. The D&I lens thing is such an important thing to think about in everything, because I think sometimes people think diversity and inclusion, and of course there's a very strategic element to it. And that's very important to have some very clear foundations and ways forward for people. But actually it is in the small things as well. So if we are able to cast that lens, like you say, the D&I lens over documents and processes and the team interactions that we have and millions of other things, then actually on a day-to-day basis, we're just slowly building a more inclusive culture. And it just makes everything, so it kind of becomes inclusive by default then, and then it becomes less intentional and it just kind of happens. So yeah, I love that. I think that's fantastic. And you also mentioned there the values and behaviors work, which yeah, I've been involved in a little bit as well, so I could cast a D&I lens over it, and those sorts of things. And it's so closely connected. It's intertwined, really. There's so much of that that kind of crossover between the two areas, and that importance around really thinking about what we bring to the organization. So whether we're a member or we are an employee, you know, we each have a personal impact. We each have the ability to make the institution even more amazing. We each have the ability to really make a difference to our teams, the people we collaborate with, the committees that we're in, all of those sorts of things. And of course then, and I keep coming back to it because it is something that's come up with regards to that improving the world through engineering, naturally then we're impacting the wider world through the work that we're doing, because engineers naturally impact wider worlds and society. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you. That was fantastic. I promise we actually haven't practiced. Anyone that's watching this right now, this is just really fantastic conversation. Hopefully people agree. So Isobel and Bims, oh thanks, Christina's just shared the values and the behaviours in the chat there for anyone that wants to have a little look. Isobel and Bims, I'd love to know from both of you, and I'm just kind of going to throw this out there for you. We often hear, and this is across lots of different industries, it's certainly not engineering at all, and lots of different people that I work with around the world. We hear that D&I is a bit fluffy. It's not really tangible. It's not really strategic. It doesn't really make a difference. That's kind of that first argument, that first conversation I tend to have with exec and senior leaders to get them to understand the importance. But I guess from your experience, how has D&I directly, positively impacted engineering as a whole? So I'm just going to kind of throw that out to whoever wants to answer that one.
Okay, well, if I pick it up first, Zoe, from a staffing point of view, I mean, you mentioned this earlier on in the conversation about that safety in the workplace and the psychological safety. And, you know, if our staff feel safe, if they feel that they can speak up, if they feel valued, then I believe they're going to pass that on in the way they support our engineers and our members. Yeah. And for me, I think, you know, you're absolutely right. There is a perspective that it's a fluffy thing to do. But then I wonder if any minister, and, you know, there are ministers that would say that, if they turn around to their staff and said, well, if you have a problem here, would you feel safe about saying that? They wouldn't, because it's already been downgraded. But actually here, I do believe our staff feel they have a voice. And that's really important to me, because there's a sense of injustice if you don't have a voice to say where something is not aligned to our values. And I think very much now, with our president putting the values at the centre of his presidential message, it's putting a stake in the ground. It's saying, as an institution, this is the way that we will go forward, with respect and value to all, you know. And I think that's really important, especially with the international message, because our international members, we want them to feel at home, whether they're sitting on a virtual screen or whether they're physically in this building with us. And that applies to our staff as well. So for me, the reach is really important. You know, and there's lots of data out there that supports, as you've already mentioned, and it's a bit like a spider's web. The data goes off into so many different strands of how important diversity and inclusion is, giving people that opportunity to feel represented, to feel that they belong, and to feel protected and safe. And I think we've come a long way in the 4 years that I've been here. I've seen massive change, and that's us listening as well. I think we've had to do a lot of listening. And then you did say something, Isobel, about commitment, because we could all have done little black squares and make announcements. But are you actually accountable and committed? And I think we've done a lot of work there. And I hope that really makes maybe those cynics step back and say, well, actually, they really are committed to bringing change within the institution for the better.
Yeah.
So Zoe, we've talked a lot about people. Maybe I'll make reference to actually sort of engineering. For me, again, a transformation point was at the time of the Paralympics and also the Invictus Games, where you see the challenges that those people have, and yet they have so much talent. But we need to design things to help them, and yet we all benefit from those. So potentially that wheelchair ramp to get into a building, we all use it because we all either are busy pulling our suitcases or something like that. So getting good design benefits everyone. Whether it be, for example, in vehicle design, how the seats are shaped, what's the space, is it suitable for any type of person to drive? It's thinking through inclusive design as well to get better engineering. I do apologize. I do look at one camera, but then I look down to Zoe's on the screen over there. So do it with our eyes and our looking here.
Very confusing, but no, it's fine. It's all very engaging. It's all really interesting. So it's helpful.
And then, of course, AI is going to introduce new aspects where potentially they have to be taught to do things, but will they learn to do it in the right way and think fairly and inclusively? It's a very interesting world that we're in, but inclusive design is going to be so critical that everyone again thinks D&I through that process.
Yeah, fantastic. So sorry, go on.
Yes, not fluffy at all.
Yeah, no, listen, you know, I'm completely on your side with this. 100% not fluffy. It's very strategic. Even if you take the human element out, even if you didn't like people, you were like, I've no interest in human beings at all. I just want my organization or my business or whatever it is to be really successful. Actually, that focusing on D&I and, like you say, inclusive design and things like that alone will really push forward that agenda. You said something there around that good design piece. And actually what you referred to is something that I love. It's called the curb effect. I think you probably know it because you've used that example there. But the curb effect is when things are designed, say, for people that have disabilities, or people that are parents, or people from a different ethnic background, whatever it might be. When they're designed for different groups of people, but then lots of other groups of people benefit from it as well. So the curb effect is where that comes from, because they were designed for lots of different types of people, but everyone actually really benefits from it. So I think that was a really nice example that you just gave there. Wonderful. So I just got a couple more questions, and I'm hoping some questions are going to come in and going to come through as we're talking, because we want to make sure we're hearing from you. Bim's just mentioned making sure everybody has a voice. So let's practice what we preach on this call and make sure that people have got their voice and we can hear at least their written voice anyway. So it would be really interesting, just from I guess from your point of view, and this again is out to just both of you here, is over the last couple of years, how do you think this work that's been done with the D&I strategy has really supported the strengthening of the working relationships between members and staff?
Do you want to go first?
Um,
And maybe we mention
Yeah.
Roy Allen, who's been on the trustee board.
Yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely. I think there's quite a few things that have been instrumental. And I think the trustees actually picking up the strategy, the D&I strategy, and saying, if we really mean this, we need someone here at this level to push forward that. And I think it was a year, probably 2 years now, just under 2 years, I should say. We appointed a co-op trustee to look after our values and behaviours and to really champion that. Was Roy Allen. And I think in the year that he was there, he really put down a legacy for us. He put down something, a pattern for us. That he talked to us, he challenged us in so many ways. But as an engineer, but with a leadership and an organisational development background, it's quite unusual to have the two together. And I think we were very privileged to have, the benefit of his experience for that year. What it did for us as a trustee board, bringing in, we have the D&I moments at the trustee board, and thanks to Helena and others that have brought real richness, a tapestry of thoughts and challenges to our trustee board. And I think that's really important, and that model has come down the organisation. I know many of the teams, certainly we do in our department, we have a D&I moment or we have a values moment, and it's not just empty, it's about how do we do better. And I think that over the last 2 years, I've seen a lot more of that sort of embedding going on. I know people like Margaret Ann and her team have done the inclusive communications. Who would have thought about that 4 or 5 years ago? There's so many real tangible examples. We've had the appointment of our diversity and inclusion officer. And that was from Christina, who actually really started that a bit like me, sort of just a passion, but shaped her own job out of that. I was very fortunate in a previous work life to be under an organisation that taught the principles of Peter Drucker and responsibility-based management. And I see that lived out here in quite an organic way, people picking up the baton and saying, I can do something better for the organisation in this way. And, very notably, obviously, our investors in people, when we came, we were at silver, we managed to retain the silver, and the standard had changed. Even so, retain it was quite difficult. I mean, the organisation was going through huge amounts of change and challenge. So to be able to retain that was a real big thing. But I also remembered at that time, we didn't have any questions that we could answer about values and about diversity and inclusion. We just actually had to lose those questions because we didn't have anything in place. But then here we are, roll forward a few years. We've got lots of questions. We could have answered loads of them. We could only pick 10. But it was so great to be able to put those in and to see the response come back. And that response validates that we have done something, that we have made change. And it's not just about amongst the staff, it's amongst the wider institution. And for me, that validates a lot of the work that we've done. There's been huge amounts of change because people are talking, they're having conversations. We had an initiative called Let's Talk About Race. That created an environment for people to feel safe to talk about those. And I hope those conversations continue into many sort of diverse areas. And I think that's really important, the principle of continuing to talk and continuing to listen and continuing to act. So from my perspective, if I cast the lens back, we've made huge transformational change. A lot to go, but we've made huge steps.
Yeah.
Zoe, I don't think I have much to add to that, because the recognition, the external recognition on the IIP was just, that says it, that it's there, it's visible, what we're doing, but there's so much more to do. We want champions, we want D&I champions. I worked for DuPont, and in that particular era, we would often start our meetings with a safety pause, safety moment. So I fully understand that they're small items, but they can trigger the important thought processes that need to go on. And again, Helena on the trustee board has been very active in doing those D&I moments there, and then we cascade them onto the website. And so we're building up a library of them for anyone to use to prompt the conversation.
Could I also add, so I think our committee members, our D&I committee members, that especially those from outside the organisation, have been fantastic ambassadors about taking back the work that we're doing here to their organisations and going, they're doing something here, right here. And that learning is really great to see that they can take, whether it's from the training, whether it's from the committees, what we're doing, what sort of initiatives we're doing, to be able to take that back to their own organisation. And I hope many of our members do the same thing, that they go back to their organisation and say, and they're proud to say, I'm a member of IMechE and they're doing something right in this field. Can we pick this up? And vice versa. There's things that we learn from other organisations as well. So I hope that does continue as well.
Yeah, that's it's so true as well. We've had people that have come through the learning program that we've been running for various groups, and they've said, oh, do you mind if I take that back to my organization? I'm like, yes, please take it. Like, we are not precious about this. We want to share as much as we possibly can. Any way we can improve engineering, even if, you know, it's an employee in an engineering organization who's friends with a member of the IMechE, anything we can do to really push this forward is really, really, really important. So yeah, thank you for that. There's also the aspect, and this is from, I guess, from my point of view, I guess as an outsider observing in, how incredible the conversations between the members and the employees have been, and how many little light bulb moments have happened for people when they have been working with a member or another member of staff. They'd never really had the opportunity to open up the conversation before. And all of a sudden they're like, ah, that's why you write your emails like that. Oh, that's why you do this at this time, kind of thing. And all of a sudden, those bonds are so much stronger. So there is something about the working relationships between members and staff, because members do a lot for the IMechE. There's a lot of volunteering hours. There's a lot of kind of personal time put into it. And the staff works so hard to make it as enjoyable as possible for the members that it just makes sense that the members and the staff are really, really collaborating, really bonding. So it's really lovely to hear some of those different aspects there. Okay, just a couple more questions. We've had some observations in the chat rather than questions, so I might pick up on some of those if we have some time. But if you can think of any... Oh.
Yeah, and Zoe, we haven't been able to see any of the chat or any of the questions. So,
no worries.
Yeah. So.
No worries, I'm on it. Don't you worry, Isabel. I'm on it. I'd rather your brains were telling us all of the wonderful information that that you've got in there. So yeah, I might just pick up on some of those if we have some time. But before we do, I'd love to know what's next on the agenda for D&I at the IMechE.
Right. Well, first of all, there's the huge unknown of what everyone else is going to do. So I don't know, don't need to know. I just need to know that they are doing D&I things for us. So there's that huge package, and a huge thank you in advance for whatever you're going to be doing, which will help us. So if I then come back and say, so what am I aware that we are going to do to help and facilitate this? One is that you've obviously done training with what we called cohort 1. We're nearly finished cohort 2, but there'll be cohort 3. But more importantly for me as well is to have a package on the web, which is accessible for all our members. It'll take a very similar but slightly different format, but we really want to give that help and assistance to our members. And so I'm really looking forward to that coming through on the web, available to all. What else are we doing? So there's the learning program. Christina is busy talking to all the 15 sectors. So that's all the different types of our organization. We've got governance committees, we've got advisory committees, staff structure. She's talking to all of those groups to find out what they are doing. Then as examples of things that others are doing for us, I've mentioned, well, there's this conference, and that will be available for longer so that people will be able to listen to this. We're going to have a governance handbook. There will be the institutional strategy, which will build, but it will cover many other things as well, and an improved IT system. I could go on.
I
There
know.
is so much, but it starts with champions and training, learning and encouragement. Yeah.
Incredible.
So, and I'm going to
I think I could add to that. Thanks, Isobel. I think from our perspective, obviously, one of the things we really are keen about, and we were talking about that the other day, is having that visibility of our diversity and inclusion officer, Christina, having a much more being able to have a platform to be more vocal about the things that we're doing. And that can happen in a number of ways, we realise. Also to have training. One of our enablers, again, is about having professionally well-trained staff. And, there's loads of areas we can still do work in terms of training and inclusive recruitment. We've all come with our different challenges around biases and things like that. We can never stop learning and things like that. I think those things are really important, but also about really making sure there's a strong case for linking diversity and inclusion to well-being. You mentioned resilience earlier on. After what we've been through for the last 2 to 3 years, it's so important that we make sure that there is a clear link between diversity, inclusion and well-being, mental health. It's not going to go away. It's going to be there. So we have to make sure that we are enabled to meet that and understand that, closer ties with our partners, with the support network as well. And I think all of these really say that as an institution, we are pushing forward and we're thinking outside the box, and we've got to make sure that we create platforms for there's a wealth of people out there who are doing D&I things in their own organizations, in universities, in schools. We need to have that platform to harvest that innovation, which speaks to our values, and to bring that impact. We're bringing on a new director, James Partington, and he's a massive advocate for D&I. So it can only be a really good thing for the institution, both from staff and from the members' perspective in terms of bringing an impact. I don't think you always need huge amounts of money, but you do need good thinkers. You need good collaborators. You need people that are willing to go that extra mile. So I hope that we will be able to pull on a pool of people, and just use their different skills and abilities, so that, I'm going back to what we said at the beginning, everyone has that sense of belonging and that they can contribute from top to the bottom.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I should perhaps mention, of course, that sometimes we get challenged. Why are we doing this? Etc. And we welcome some of those challenges if they're expressed in a positive way to actually get a better solution, because we may not have this entirely right, so we need to understand that. So challengers, please come and talk to us. We'll have that conversation with you. We will stand up and be counted.
I think the thing to add to that, Isobel, is that you're absolutely right, but let's go back to our values. Well, it says what's for the greater good, because we all got opinions and thoughts and things, and I think that's really important that we have that. But what's for the greater good of this institution? And I'd love to think we've done 175 years and we've been relevant. I'd love to think that in another 175 years, that and future prospective engineers and staff will say that institution is still relevant. There's still a place for me there. So I think it does go back to that bedrock of our values, that the first one is inclusion. There's no, that they're not in priority order, but it does talk about, are we all in this together? What's for the greater good? And I really think that's an important thing that all of us have that mandate, whether we're staff or members, that is it time to put our personal things aside in order to think about the greater good of everyone else?
Yeah, Wonderful. Thank you. That was a really nice wrap up, actually, with regards to the questions. And we've had a lot of observations come through in the chat, not necessarily questions. We've got one question that I am going to ask. And there's some really great observations in there that I think we can probably take away and maybe answer individually or out to the people that have come out, and we'll send something out to them. Some things around neurodiversity, some things around people's personal experiences, and I think Neil mentioned the Jaguar Land Rover case, which I'm very familiar with. It was actually a landmark case which actually changed the law, which is brilliant. So really great observations. We'll pick them up and we'll make sure we come back to you on anything that we can following the session. But I do want to pick up, because we have had one specific question from Ian, and Ian's just talking about chairing forums at work that promote women in engineering, and a lot of the initiatives that Ian's seen have really relied on the few female engineers that they have to promote engineering to women. But obviously one of the things is, how can we influence the larger male population and ask them to do something to encourage women into engineering? And it's just any thoughts that Ian would like to hear there.
You know, it's really interesting you said that, because we were having a discussion earlier, and I've had an earlier discussion with Christina about this, and that it starts in the workplace. This is something that Christina and I learnt when we was at the Royal Academy. It starts in the home, sorry, I beg your pardon. That those conversations have to take place in the home. How do we influence what our children think are worthy careers, how they can contribute to society? And engineering is so diverse. I didn't have any idea of how many forms of engineers there were until I came here. And that's what we have to get across, the message that you can still be an influencer, you can still make impact in your world, but you can do it through engineering. We have to change the way we teach our children, the way we teach our grandchildren, our nephews and our nieces. And we have to take ownership for that. And if we're school governors, well, what are we asking about the school curriculum, about our toys? If we go into, it really starts in those small building blocks. But if, for me personally, when I had to do a sort of a course of change in a place that wasn't engineers, it was car mechanics, because I worked in the car industry, which was notoriously sexist and a lot of other things. And, you know, we were changing from a call center that was male mechanics to semi-technical, and they were going to mainly be part-time, and they were mainly female. And to change the mindset, a lot of that was, what conversation would you like to have with your daughter about this? Would you like them to experience, if they wanted to be an engineer, would you like them to experience the kind of comments that are being made around this room now? And it's them taking ownership and thinking, no, I don't actually, I want to be part of positive change. And it's not about bashing people on the head. It's about opening up the possibility that you can have better conversations if you're open to listen to what's being said to you. It sounds simplistic, but I found it was a really way to change the tide of thought. As well.
I'm going to talk about sort of men as allies, and the Women's Engineering Society very much recognise the contribution that men play in that role as well. So not just for females to do it, but men to do it as well. And I did one particular visit to a company, and I said, gosh, you're nearly 50-50, male, female. How did you do it? And this was at the apprenticeship level and the young engineers. And he said, well, first of all, I've been working with the local community. But the other thing was, many people want to come and visit the factory. And I say, yes, you can come, but you must bring a 50-50 group with you. So in effect, he put it out there and said, start to think doing it 50-50. And so for him, the school then, if it was a boys' school, they had to come on the trip with the girls' school. But if it was a mixed school, they made sure they brought a 50-50 community. So it's just giving people that fairly straightforward challenge. And then many people will rise to it and say, okay, so I've got to come 50-50. But it worked in that organisation, and it resulted in their staffing in the apprenticeship, young engineers being 50-50.
Excellent. Wow, brilliant advice. I'm hoping Ian is taking some of those away, and obviously all of our other listeners and watchers and what have you as well. But that's all we've got time for, sadly. Obviously, we could have talked about this forever. Ian said thank you in the chat, so I think that was spot on, which is brilliant. And like I said, we've got some really great observations in the chat that we'll take away. We'll have a little bit of a look at them and see how we can come back to you, because we want to make sure that any questions or queries that you have, that we're able to support your understanding and your kind of confidence in the work that the IMechE is doing around diversity and inclusion. But yeah, that's it, everybody. Thank you so much. If you do have any questions separately to this, you can always email diversity@imeche.org, and the team there will be very happy to come back to you. And yeah, we really hope to see you very soon. And thank you so much for taking the time to spend a little bit of time with us today. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Zoe.